actually me. A few months ago, I took a little road trip to South Dakota, and I had to go to a wedding there for a friend of mine. And while we were traveling, I was kind of surprised to see we ended up traveling through a few large wind farms. So they had the large turbines set up throughout the fields, and they were just slowly turning, and it was almost quite peaceful to see. I'd never really seen it before. And this last week over spring break, I also took a trip to Springfield, and again, I was surprised to find myself driving through another large wind farm. And that surprised me because I didn't realize that the phenomena of wind farms was as close to home as it actually is. And it's starting to become more of a popular trend throughout the nation. So I decided to look into the idea of wind farms and see how popular they actually are and if they are an efficient means for energy. And it turns out that just this last weekend, Illinois and 4 other states signed an agreement working with Obama to for each of these states to work with both the state and the federal governments to set up a process to determine if these wind farms are a cost-effective, environmentally friendly option for energy. This official decision doesn't actually put any rules or regulations into place, so the actual establishment of wind farms is still a long way in the future. But right now, state and federal officials are beginning to discuss the idea and sharing information between the states to see if wind farm proposals in the Great Lakes is a feasible idea. Critics from the White House are calling this idea a smart and practical way to encourage the development of clean energy. Obviously, this energy source wouldn't be using any fossil fuels. It would only be using the wind power from the Great Lakes. There are a lot of pros and cons to the implementation of these wind farms. Some positive reasons for putting them in the Great Lakes would be, again, that they would provide clean energy and they would encourage economic growth. And the White House believes that hundreds of jobs would also be created in building these wind farms and also, again, reducing greenhouse gas emissions. However, there are people who are also opposed to the idea. They argue that the large rotating turbines could harm wildlife, any birds flying through the area, or it could potentially affect sea life as well, since the turbines would be offshore. It's also been argued that the turbines cost too much to develop and there's just simply too many unknown factors since it hasn't been done here in America. People also think that they're not very pretty to look at, which for us here in Chicago, people might get angry that their skyline is tainted by these turbines out in the water. Like I said, there are a lot of unknown factors with developing these wind farms offshore in the Great Lakes. We would need to get state and federal approval. So there's a lot of coordination that needs to happen, a lot of discussion that needs to go back and forth about the best way for implementing these wind farms. And again, this idea is completely new here in America, so there's currently no procedure for issuing permits, for building them. It's a completely new idea. But with the way that our economy is struggling right now and the environmental issues that we've been struggling with, especially over the last few years, this could really make a huge difference in how we obtain our energy, especially for us here in Chicago. Some of the unknowns that go along with this project include: how are we going to pay for this energy development? It is a huge leap from what we currently have, so we would need to figure out if we can afford this huge change and make this possibility a reality. Another problem would be, how do we transport the supplies to build these turbines to the actual site? Again, it's offshore, so there would have to be a lot of coordination and planning to go into that. And furthermore, the wind turbines have a certain life expectancy. So once they have, I guess, fulfilled their duty and they need to be replaced after years of use, we would have to figure out how we would go about doing that, what we would do with the old supplies, and how we would replace them with new, improved turbines. So there are a lot of unknown factors with the development of this energy process, but with the recently signed agreement between these 5 states, information is starting to come together, and an evaluation process for the development of these turbines is starting to go into place. Here in Chicago, the idea of wind turbines was actually brought up about 7 years ago, but it was immediately rejected due to concerns about migrating birds. The large turbines would rotate, and it could, like I said earlier, cause harm to the wildlife here in Chicago. But after President Obama's administration made the announcement that these 5 states were going to begin working together, the city of Chicago seems very interested in revisiting the idea and exploring it again. Mayor Rahm Emanuel very much supports the idea. He strongly supports expanding investments for creating clean energy rather than adding to the pollution problem. The nearby city of Evanston is also very much in support of the idea. The mayor is interested in setting up enough turbines to power the entire city of 30,000 homes. So imagine if we can implement these wind turbines, how much that would change, how we're affecting the world. So will we see them in Chicago in the near future? We will have to wait and see.